Hi everyone, my name is Laci Gray. I'm a senior undergraduate student at UNCG, and today I will be discussing with you all my research study, memory and emotions. Something unique about my research is that I am sort of meshing together cognitive psychology and clinical psychology by using cognitive techniques to address clinical questions. And the main cognitive technique that I use is called item method directed forgetting. So doing this, we present words one at a time to participants, and each word is immediately followed by a cue to either remember or forget that previous word. We measure this using a memory test, usually free recall, which means that we ask participants to write down any and all words they could remember from the previous directed forgetting task in whatever order they want to, and also regardless of whether they were supposed to remember or forget that word. The typical directed forgetting effect that we see is that participants recall more remember words than forget words. So my research question is, do individuals with borderline personality disorder remember or forget borderline salient information differently than everyone else? So what is borderline personality disorder? It's characterized by 9 symptoms, and one must have at least 5 of those symptoms to qualify for a diagnosis. And the most important symptom that is relevant to my disorder is called negative affectivity, which means that someone with BPD may perceive the world around them in a more negative manner, or even themselves in a more negative manner. And it also could negatively affect how they remember information. So why do we even care? Why am I doing this study in the first place? I'm attempting to clarify previous research findings because right now the results are very mixed. And we also want to understand the symptomology of BPD to the best of our ability so that we can create better treatments and also increase someone's quality of life with BPD. And the important thing to remember about personality disorders is that there is no cure. People with a personality disorder hold on to them for the rest of their life, so treatment is very vital. Previous literature on BPD and directed forgetting. Before my study, there were only 2 studies that looked at BPD and directed forgetting. The first study found that BPD patients had difficulties forgetting BPD salient words, and the second study found that BPD patients did not experience any difficulties forgetting, but they did experience enhanced remembering of BPD salient words. And these studies produced contradicting results, which is where I come in with my current study. I wanted to improve the methodology as best as I could, and I made a couple more improvements, but these are the ones that are the most relevant. So I followed suggestions made by Delaney et al., which is a group of cognitive psychologists at UNCG, and they published a paper on how to best use directed forgetting in studies. And I also oversampled for people high in BPD traits, meaning that I had more people in my sample with high BPD traits than there are in a typical population. And I did this so that if there were any effects with BPD, I would see them. I had 112 female participants from UNCG, and their PAI-BOR scores. The PAI-BOR is just a test to see where their BPD trait levels are. Those scores, the mean was 32.29, which is relatively high because a college population, the average is 26. So this means that we successfully oversampled for BPD traits. This is an abridged version of my procedure. So for the item method directed forgetting task, there were 2 conditions. The first condition, those people had to forget BPD salient words. And in the second condition, people had to forget negative words. And I have examples of those words here. And then they did a 2-minute distraction task, followed by a free recall test. And at the very end, they did the PAI-BOR. So what did we find? After methodological improvements and oversampling for BPD traits, there are no effects with BPD traits, but we did see a huge directed forgetting effect. And this tells me that we nearly perfected how to use directed forgetting in this study because the directed forgetting effect was so huge. So paying attention to the graph, which is indicative of the entire sample, not just those high BPD traits, we see large directed forgetting effects for both word types. So the blue column are words that were supposed to be remembered. The red were words that were supposed to be forgotten. And obviously people recalled way more remember words than they did forget words. But more importantly is that people high in BPD traits performed more or less the same as everyone else. So what does this all mean? We did see a robust directed forgetting effect, but we did not see any effects related to BPD traits. which is different from the previous two studies. And this means that results across the literature are very inconsistent. And when I say literature, I just mean the previous two studies and my study. But I believe that my study provides evidence that make the consensus clearer about BPD and directed forgetting. And what is the consensus? I think that people with BPD may respond more emotionally than cognitively to BPD-related stimuli, or at the very least, BPD-related words. So I'd like to thank my advisors and the undergraduates and graduate students that supported me along the way. I'd also like to thank you all for watching and giving me your attention, and I hope you have a great day.